Welcome to the So Much More podcast, where we talk with people in the custom window treatment, soft home furnishings industry, and so much more. I'm your host, Seal DeGuglielmo. My guest on the podcast today is Amy Sedera. She began Windows by Amy in her home in Phoenix, Maryland in 2017, focusing on window treatments, cushions, and pillows. Coming off a career in engineering to raise her children, Amy wanted to have a creative outlet, a source of income, and the flexibility that owning a workroom provided. She builds relationships with retail clients that involve designing, fabricating, and installing her luxury custom products. Outside of the workroom, she enjoys cooking, gardening, and spending time with her husband and her 2 children and their pets. I really hope that you enjoy hearing from Amy today. Amy, thank you so much for agreeing to be on the podcast. It's so nice to see you today.
It's great to see you too, Seal.
Well, thank you for saying yes. I'm looking forward to our conversation. And if you could, for anyone who doesn't know who you are, tell us a little bit about who you are, where you are in the world, and a little bit about what's important in your life.
I am Amy Sedera. I own Windows by Amy in Phoenix, Maryland. And I have owned my workroom since about 2017. I have a husband of almost 25 years, and my son Will is a freshman in college, and my daughter Madeline is a sophomore in high school. So they keep me busy, and it's really nice to have this in my home so I can do the things that need to be done for them.
That's awesome. And I often realize that as they got older, they may not have needed as much of my time, but they still needed me. And so
Yes.
it was a really wonderful way to still be available to them.
It's a constant text messages and phone calls from my son in college and even my daughter during the school day. And it's very busy with them.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your business. How did you get started in this business, and what type of business do you have?
Well, I work mostly retail. My clients come from most of the Baltimore County area and sometimes further. I started my business after I was an engineer for about a dozen years and needed something more to do with the kids being home. And it was a wonderful decision because I always had made many different types of window treatments and lots of quilting, lots of home goods. And I figured once I had a space to be able to do a business, I figured I would start my business. So I started it as a business because I knew I needed to have a little bit of extra money, but I also wanted to be profitable. And so once we moved into our new house about 10 years ago, I had the perfect island space that was big enough to roll out fabric. It was 48 by 120, so almost the same size as a work table. So once we had moved here, I was able to start serving clients in the area. And my workspace was a tiny little office, about as wide as my arms.
Okay.
So I packed a huge industrial size ironing board, walking foot machine. All my other machines were on tables because I didn't have any other place to sit down.
Okay.
So packed in that space. But the issue was every day when the kids would get home from school, I had to have everything spotless and cleaned up and put away.
It's funny because I know so many of us started like rolling things out on the floor, and you're saying the island was perfect. I'm like, until you have to put it away and make dinner.
Right.
Or until you've got to clean it every time before any fabric touches it.
Yes, it had to be perfectly spotless every single morning before I would start a project. And it just became way too much for me to handle all the time. So finally, about 2 years ago, we converted the storage space in my basement to a full-size workroom. Okay. I feel like the space is already too small for me, but it works. I've kind of just grown into the rest of the basement for finished goods and grown into the dining room upstairs for finished goods. Okay. And so we finished the space to my specifications and had the work table built, and it's been a great space for the past 2 years.
It amazes me how so many of us start. A couple of us were talking about the first tables that we used, and it was a Joanne craft table, and the sides would slide the legs out, and it would flip the table up, and then I'd put two different cutting boards with the little metal clips on them to attach them to each other. And I remember doing that and thinking, oh my gosh, this is so spacious and it's so awesome. And then I got a pair of draperies to make and I went, oh, this is not nearly big enough.
Right.
But you make do
Mm-hmm.
in the beginning until you can figure something else out. So
Yes,
you also will take up whatever amount of space is given to you. So
for sure. And my productivity increased greatly once I had everything in one space. The space was big enough. I was able to put rolls at the end of the table and roll them out and inspect and just do everything so much more efficiently than I had been before. So
right.
it's
That
been a
makes a
great
huge difference.
yes, it's been a great thing to have the space down here.
Okay. So you are retail only?
Yes, I have really kind of honed into the type of client I like to work with.
Okay.
And I started charging for consultations about 2.5 years ago. And ever since I started doing that, I have really found the perfect clients for myself.
Okay.
They are really luxury, high-end clients. Especially for just a one-person workroom, I'm able to do these large projects and be able to serve them one-on-one. And they
Okay.
don't necessarily need a designer to help them. I'm filling that role as a designer, trying to help them determine what their needs are and what type of window treatment they need, and also selecting all the fabrics. So
Okay.
I grew up loving fabrics.
Okay.
My background is textiles and clothing, so fabrics have always touching and feeling fabrics anywhere I go. And that's really been one of the best parts about being mostly retail is that I do get to serve them finding the perfect fabrics for them. So, and
Okay.
I charge for that too. I just kind of roll it into my pricing when I'm pricing a job. So,
Okay. So it's interesting because when I talk with people about whether they're retail or not, there are a lot of us who do not enjoy the process of searching for fabrics for people.
right.
And you just lit up when you started talking about, I love fabric. I don't like
I
helping
love
people
that.
choose it.
Well, most of the time, they're referrals from previous clients, so they know kind of how I work and they know
Okay.
that they can trust me with the decisions. And if I have to make a decision for them, I can, but I always tell them I'm not an interior designer. I can
Mhm.
help you with the design process. Here are my recommendations, or try to steer them to a fabric that's a better choice for their project. So I
Okay.
enjoy that process a lot.
Okay. I'm when I read your bio, it made me immediately curious about your engineering background and
Mhm.
what that brings to the business process. And I'm already hearing some things that
Yes.
sound like the engineering mindset.
Hmm.
But for all the bad jokes about engineers that are out there, engineers I know are really creative people.
Yes.
They just find ways to create processes and make sure that things
Yes.
work. And I'm hearing that in your voice, but I'm hearing it in a way that I have a brother who's an engineer, and he's often taken a bad rap. I don't think
Right.
he's boring at all. I actually think he's hilarious. But I also love to watch his mind work when he's trying to make things
Hmm.
work properly.
Right.
And I'm
And
curious about what your engineering background brought to the creation of the business.
well, I graduated with a degree in apparel merchandising design and production. And
Hmm.
so apparel engineering was really what I wanted to go into when I
Okay.
graduated. But right at that time in the late 90s, NAFTA came about, and most of the jobs were going south in apparel manufacturing and going to China. So all this talk of tariffs and trying to bring manufacturing back, it's very sad for me because we lost such a huge industry 30 years
Right.
ago, and it's going to be near impossible to bring that type of manufacturing back to the US. We've just lost the skill set of all the people that make the clothes, all the engineers that engineer
Right.
the production lines, that train the people how to produce the clothing and make it more efficient.
Hmm.
So once that happened, I kind of had to switch gears and I went into industrial productions sewing for a bag maker in Iowa. So I was there for 2 years and then my husband proposed to me. And so that's when we moved to Maryland and I had to
Okay.
completely change industries. And so I was in the aerospace industry for a while. I was a manufacturing engineer for biological and chemical detection systems that we are bringing from England over to the US. So I was the engineer that was writing all the processes, taking all the pictures, training all the associates to be able to build the product and come up with the testing protocols and all of that. So
Okay.
once I had my daughter, I could not go back. And this again, in the mid 2000s, they didn't have any work-life balance for women with children.
Right.
And so that's really when I decided I need to not do anything for a while. And then I opened my workroom about 10 years after that. So the engineering side of me is being fed now because it wasn't for all those years of just being home with the kids. And so writing processes and taking pictures of my work to remind myself how I produce something, and also the financial side. So I was doing a lot of work in Excel spreadsheets, very large spreadsheets for huge government programs. And so I use that a lot in my business to be able to know how profitable something is and how to cost projects and how to keep track of my time to make sure I'm earning enough for each job that I produce. So that's how that plays into there.
Okay. I love that you said very early on in this interview about making a profit. And I recently was having a conversation with someone closer to my age than your age. And we were saying that a lot of the younger people coming into the industry are really clever and creative, but they are also not tolerating lower pay like many of us did in the beginning.
Yes.
And I'm also thrilled to hear you talk about what skills and what procedures you used in previous jobs that you are bringing to the next job. Because I've interviewed a number of people like, yeah, I did this in my past business, but when I started my own, it's like I forgot everything I ever learned. And many of us started this as, well, I've got this skill, so let me see if I can make a few extra dollars. Not, I need to be profitable. And I love that that's your mindset on that. And I hear it more and more often with the next generation of our industry. And it thrills me no end. It really does.
Yeah, it's really, because I also do my own installations. And so each installation is another engineering problem.
Yes,
so
it is.
I just installed a couple weeks ago at an 1880s house that had curved glass windows. And so I had to do a template for the custom rods. It was 3 different windows with curved glass. And trying to figure out how to go into plaster, how to make it hang perfectly. And it was different lengths and different, all the motifs had to be lined up perfectly. And it was just fabulous when it was finished because it was exactly what they wanted. And it looked as perfect as it could because nothing's ever perfect. We see all the flaws.
Yeah.
So, but it's really been wonderful for my brain to have something to work on every day that's challenging too.
I love that is that part of your brain is being fed. And I know that there are a lot of us that say, oh, I'm creative. I can't do the numbers. I can't do the this. I can't do the that. I love that you're finding a way to use both sides of your brain and you're still doing all this creative work, but also the engineering, because hanging hardware, it's funny. I just saw a post the other day on the installer's Facebook page, and it was like, isn't there a simple math problem for hanging hardware? Like, math solution, shouldn't there be one?
There really should be.
But when I looked at all the answers, I was like, everybody does it differently. And some did it the same way as my installer does. But I know that I've worked with my installer sometimes and he does it the same way he always does it. And it's not quite right. And we're like, what didn't work this time?
Right.
Like, well, because fabric is different. The houses are different. That you thought you were going into a stud, you're not. All of that. So
it's a crazy situation. I have begun working with an installer on some of my bigger jobs, which has been a huge relief to me because watching him do it, I do the same things, and I install something 50 times before it gets installed, and seeing him do exactly what I would do is very reassuring to me that I'm
Yes.
doing it the right way. But there's some things I just can't do. I had, the first one he did for me was, almost 200 inches wide. And one of the rods was 125 inches, and it
Oh,
was a
wow.
double rod, with ripple fold. And he did it flawlessly. I mean, it took
Okay.
him so much less time than it would have taken, and he was worth every penny.
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
having him install another job for me coming up. So,
Okay. So I don't want to assume anything about how you want to see your business grow or maintain. Is that something you see yourself letting go of and having doing fewer of the installs yourself? Or do you still feel like it's important for you to be doing it?
well, when it's, simple Roman shades for installation, to me, they're very easy to do. But when it comes to drapery, I think drapery is a lot more skilled than
Mhm.
hanging shades or Roman shades. So having that help and being able to, give it to somebody else, it does save a little bit of time, but I still have to be there anyway.
Okay,
So
right.
it does save a little bit. It saves me grief and gives me more sleep the night before. So
Yes.
that's 100% worth it. So
That
with
I
the
understand.
Yeah, so with the bigger jobs, I'm definitely just putting it into the budget and making sure that it gets passed to the client in an appropriate way, and
Okay.
then I'm covered. But
Okay.
yes.
Yeah. So you started your business after being home for a while. What was the process for you in getting your business started? What did you do first and how did you get things going?
Well, since I was encouraged by friends to do this, I talked about it for a while.
Mhm.
I had to have, a couple of guinea pigs to practice on. So
Right.
trusted friends that did let me charge them, but of course, way too low in the beginning, because I did start in the beginning just charging a very small fee to be able to do everything. But I started with, friends and their houses
Mhm.
and my own home. I had done a lot of Roman shades and a lot of draperies for my own home. And of course, you've talked about this many times that you go back to look at your work and it's kind of embarrassing. Like, how did I ever do that? Or
Mhm.
even the hems on some draperies, it's, everything looks so perfect now, being hand sewn and
Mhm.
hand done. And those beginning ones are not, of course, looking from afar, they look great.
Right.
But us knowing exactly what we know, it was great practice though to be able to have trusting friends to let me do
Mhm.
some of their work, and then they just started telling their friends, and then a couple people posted on Facebook or had heard about me, or I'd even said I can help you with your project. So
Okay.
then it just kind of started very, very slowly, and then of course 2020 happened,
Right.
and everybody was inside looking at their ugly whatevers in their homes. And so I really, the first couple of weeks of the pandemic, I sewed masks because I've sewn since I was about 5 years old.
Okay.
Um, when I was old enough to reach the pedal to the mini featherweight, Singer featherweight, it has a little 1/8 inch seam allowance. So
Mhm.
I learned very early how to sew. But during pandemic, I made probably around 2,000 masks
Oh,
because
wow.
I could not do nothing. I had to do something.
Right.
Even though, in retrospect, maybe none of it helped, but at least it was calming for me. It
Right.
kept my sanity. I was doing something, I was being productive. And
Right.
because the kids were both home, so I had to help them with their work
Right.
and schoolwork. So, but then after the shutdowns kind of ceased to exist, then people started really contacting me, and it's
Okay.
been it's been fairly busy ever since.
Okay, that's
So,
awesome. I
mhm,
love that. And I love too, Amy, that you said this is a luxury high-end product.
mhm,
This is
mhm.
not for everybody. And I, I love the confidence in your voice when you say that because this is not something that should be done inexpensively. And
Right.
just the things that you mentioned, like putting in three different windows in an older home with curved glass, that
Mhm.
requires an investment in time
Yes.
and all of that. Like you said, doing a template, all of that is
Mhm, mhm.
necessary in order to get the right finished product. And
Yes.
that's not off the rack. That's not
Right.
something you can pick up at J.C. Penney. So,
Right.
yeah,
I mean, I can't afford myself. So,
I say that
I
a
mean, yeah,
lot.
I don't think any of us can, or we
Right.
don't make the time because we're so tired once we're done. But it's kind of funny because I try to upgrade one room at a time in my house, and having the challenge that you and Susan do has been very helpful because
Oh,
then I at
good.
least have fire to be
Yeah,
able to
yeah.
choose fabric and get something done. Because I finished my master bedroom last year with
I remember that.
motorized Roman shade and drapery, blackout draperies, and a cornice board. And I think that was my first cornice board. And
Okay.
so I learned so much, but then it was something I could offer because there are a lot of cornice boards right now.
Yeah.
People
So
are coming back to those.
you've become your own guinea pig.
Yes, for sure. For sure.
So I'm curious, Amy, at any point did you consider quitting?
I think probably in 2021, 2022, sometime there when it got really, really busy. Um, I've improved my coping mechanisms for stress
Okay.
and knowing that I can only do so much in a day. So I was thinking about it back then because I was so stressed out. I really felt pressure. There's no pressure for me to earn any money. I'm
Okay.
paying for my kids' college with this money I'm earning.
Okay.
So we have been so blessed with my husband as a professor, so he has a good stable job, and now we're just using my income to pay for college. So it's been a huge blessing that we haven't had to take any loans for that. But 2021 and 2022 were difficult. So I started implementing some things after that to help me a little bit, especially with scheduling. So
Okay.
I think I've shown you before just my paper calendar.
Yes.
I only schedule 4 hours of work every day. So I'm definitely part time.
Okay.
Um, Sometimes I can get 6 or 8 done. Sometimes I get 1 or 2 if I'm meeting with a client.
Hmm.
I don't get as much done, or if I have an install. So I just try to space out the jobs and use my calendar to see where I am, and then I don't get down on myself if I don't get everything finished.
Okay.
So I tend to draw my lead times, so it gives me a little bit of leeway. And then people are always so happy when they get their things 2 weeks earlier than they expected.
Right.
So
Right.
yes. So, typically I'm like 10 to 12 weeks out right now, and I can sometimes get it in 10 weeks. But just having a schedule has really allowed me to relax a little bit and enjoy the process,
Hmm.
instead of just wanting this job finished so I can start the next one. It's
Right.
more of a I'm really putting a lot of my energy into making things, and I just want it to be perfect for the client. So,
Yeah. So that brings up a couple things, Amy. One of the things, implementing things to reduce your stress, I think is
mhm,
really so smart.
mhm.
And you mentioned the schedule, drawing out your lead times. Is there anything else in particular? Because that interests me a great deal. I think we put a lot of stress on ourselves.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
other than those two, is there anything else that you would share that you've implemented?
Yeah, so one thing because again, coming from a manufacturing facility, you have to have everything perfect. And so I do a little work order for myself,
Mm-hmm.
and it has all the information for the job, and again, paper. I do love paper. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think I'll switch any of this to electronic because I do not use QuickBooks. I
Okay.
started when I started, it was still too expensive. They weren't supporting desktop versions, so
Mm-hmm.
I don't use QuickBooks. I use Excel for everything and have
Okay.
impeccable paperwork, slash documents online for in Excel for my business.
Okay.
But just writing out every step that I need to take for the job, what it entails, and then I also keep track of hours for every single job,
Okay.
and sometimes even just the operation. So I know how long it's supposed to take me to do any type of job. Then I can cost it really well for the client, and
Okay.
then not kick myself when I'm off.
Right.
For if it takes me 10 hours more, well, it shouldn't, because I have all this data from 7, 8 years that I
Okay.
collate and then update my pricing, because I do charge by the square foot for everything.
Okay.
So I've really honed it down to know how much it costs me per square foot in labor and time. And then that also includes installation. It's all
Okay.
rolled into one figure.
Okay.
So, and then I keep track of all the materials I use. So I think documentation of that to know which jobs are profitable, because a lot of the time cushions are just, I love cushions. They just go so fast and they're very profitable because they are quick.
Okay.
So just knowing the data to be able to try to not necessarily look for those jobs, but to know that I can spend a little bit more time on the drapery for that project if the cushions went extra fast this time.
Okay. All right.
So I do a lot of documentation
Okay.
and timing. Mm-hmm.
All right. So I'm curious, if you were not doing this as a career, would you consider going back to engineering or would you do something else?
Well, I'd make a lot more money as an engineer. That's for sure. But I love the flexibility with this job. So if I wasn't doing this, I probably would. Um, it's it would be really difficult though, because the stress level of that job was incredible.
I can imagine.
It because these were machines that were going out to the field to help our soldiers during wartime,
Yeah.
to search for chemical and biological weapons. So
Yeah, to protect them. So yeah, that's a lot of yeah.
So I might go back to engineering if I need to.
Okay.
Yeah. So I might do that if I absolutely have to.
But I absolutely love that you have learned to do something creative, but still are using the logical skills and tasks that engineering either taught you or was already part of your natural skill set. I love that.
Definitely part of my brain when I was born.
So tell me, what have been some of the biggest challenges for you in getting this business started and moving forward?
The biggest challenge is definitely finding clients.
Okay.
Right now is, again, a very busy time, but I don't know what's going on in August right now. So I think that is somewhat stressful, but every time I send out a quote, I say a prayer and I say, if it's your will, God, then I will get this job. And that's definitely the mindset that I have with any work that I get.
Okay.
Is if I'm supposed to be getting it, I will get it. If somebody is going to call me, they're going to call me. It's not up to me.
Okay.
So that's kind of how I run my business, with finding more clients, and with getting more clients and more word of mouth. Then it's always been full. The hopper's been full all these years. So I haven't been let down yet. So, but that is definitely the hardest part of doing retail. I would work with designers. I haven't been looking, and they haven't been looking. I've done some events, networking events, but again, I am kind of on the introverted side with large groups of people. So, introducing myself and giving a card is really, I have to maybe have a glass of wine before I do that. So finding new clients is the biggest challenge.
And it sounds like working one-on-one with the clients it fits your personality more anyway. So,
yes. Okay. Yes, it does. Yep.
So I would love to know what your definition of success is.
Well, I think when I install a product and my client is extremely happy and I get a hug, that is success to me.
Okay.
Because I just love when that happens, because again, most of us being perfectionists, we see every little flaw, but when a client doesn't see it and she sees perfection and is so happy that she gives a hug and then is happily writing the check, that is success.
And I might add, you've been smart enough not to point out the flaws too.
Right, exactly. Exactly. I just try to look as happy as they are. And then, they don't know if there's anything wrong or amiss, because sometimes you got to make it work too.
Exactly.
So.
Exactly. Yep. All right. So knowing that you've already said twice about noticing the things that you've done wrong, how do you handle mistakes?
Well, since I seem like I kind of choose my clients carefully, when I do make a mistake, they're usually very understanding. With these curved windows. So I didn't have any problems with the curved windows, but one of the other windows, I had installed the wrong bracket hardware.
Okay.
And so, of course, it was plaster. And so once I realized I installed the wrong bracket, I said, I'm not going to put anything up. I will order the correct hardware. I will be back here next week. And they're like, we completely understand. They're very understanding. So I always say I'm harder on myself than my client ever would be.
Right.
So I beat myself up enough for everybody.
I've got that covered.
I got that covered. Don't worry. So, and sometimes the consequence there was it's an hour to get there. So the cost, I haven't made any huge mistakes with fabric, but the cost of getting hardware and doing it was the time for me was the biggest thing. So driving up and driving back another time was the hardest. So,
Amy, I feel like that's one of the things that early on in a lot of our businesses, we don't acknowledge that time cost. And listen, we're human, we make mistakes, and you handled it gracefully. Your clients were good about it. And I'm sure living in an older home, they have had all kinds of things go wrong or not being able to find the right things that fit into their home. But it's that I think in the early parts of our business, we disregard, well, I'll just go back again. Well, if it's an hour away, that's most of your day. By the time you go, take care of it and come back again. And I'm thrilled to hear you say that like that impacts you when you make a mistake like that. Yes, if we cut fabric wrong and have to reorder it, that can be a disaster. But we tend to be less hard on ourselves for that. And it's literally taking away from our profit when that happens. We make less money because we've got to order more fabric.
Yes.
The sponsors of the So Much More podcast allow me to bring guests to you each week. And without them, I couldn't do it. I'm pleased as the owner of the Curtains and Soft Furnishings Resource Library that I can use the library to help sponsor the podcast as well. The library hosts the industry's largest curated collection of educational resources for the custom home furnishings professional. Membership to the library gives you access to a wealth of downloadable reference materials, videos, live events, as well as a community of support to help you develop your design, sales, and fabrication skills, and to grow or start a business. Join the library today at csfrl.org. The Workroom Channel is the premier online training provider for professional fabrication skills. Go to theworkroomchannel.com to browse the selection of anytime access courses created by industry experts. Watch detailed demonstration videos, download companion materials, and participate in private course discussion boards with your instructor and classmates from around the world. Start your course path today at theworkroomchannel.com. Education, networking, visibility, and industry discounts are just a few of the benefits that are offered to members of the Window Covering Association of America. The WCAA is the only national nonprofit trade association that's dedicated to the window coverings industry and the dealers, decorators, workrooms, designers, and installers that make up our membership. The library is a gold level sponsor of the WCAA. Join today at WCAA.org. WCAA, where you are never in business alone. Discover Klimaka Studios, where innovation meets exceptional design. Klimaka fabric and wallpaper collections are inspired by the original works of collaborating artists and developed with the understanding of how fabrics are manipulated into exquisite soft home furnishings. Workroom businesses enjoy exclusive access to engineered designs and best trade pricing. From clever layouts to classic linen prints, Klimaka Studios delivers the quality and consistency that your business demands. And Klimaka's reliable, on-time delivery keeps your projects running smoothly. Go to klimakastudios.com for swatches and trade account information. Klimaka Studios, for the joy and profit of workrooms. All right, so I meant to ask you this when I asked you about success. What has been the greatest success in your business so far? Based on that description that you gave me about the hug and the happiness, what's been your greatest success so far?
Well, I think it's coming up to be the greatest success, but I am doing my first whole house right now.
Oh, wow.
And this was a previous client that I did, thousands of dollars worth of cushions. I mean, I lost track of how many cushions I did for her outdoor enormous patio. And
Okay.
so she called me last year, and said, we're buying a new house, we're gutting it, and I want you to do all the window treatments. And I said, okay, I can do that. She says, I just want to make sure you're up for it. I said, yes, I am. So we met in January and February, and we went over. I helped her choose the fabrics for everything in the
Oh,
house,
wow. Amy, that's awesome.
and even her furniture fabric. So she had gone to several high-end furniture places that did not have fabric she liked.
Okay.
And she had said that, you have the most beautiful fabric. Well, I use a lot of Charlotte fabrics. I find them to
Okay.
be very affordable. They have Krypton finishes. They have, they have the higher end finishes.
Mhm.
And sometimes I find that more expensive fabric does not mean that it's better. So
Correct.
you get a value for, I think, in Charlotte fabrics. And she loved some upholstery fabrics that they had. And so I was able to order all the fabric for her. So I got the fabric sale. And
Awesome.
now I'm, you know, 15 shades that I was able to sell to, because I do hard treatments as well.
Okay.
And then all the rest, draperies, cornice boards, bedding, pillows.
Wow.
So even just having her trust me
Yeah.
um, was a huge success, because it's been a great experience
Yeah.
to keep track of all, I mean, beautiful fabrics she chose, and just
Mhm.
working through each room was a challenge. But once it's all done and it gets installed on, coming up in June, so I'll be
Okay.
so happy when it's finished, and it'll be a great success, because she's so happy with choosing me to help her. And
Oh,
no
that's
designer, it's just me. I've
okay.
gone to the furniture store with her and chosen out her furniture, and
Okay.
helped her with some other things. So it's been wonderful. So that's coming up to be a big success. At least I hope so.
Yeah. So Amy, I can't wait to see the pictures and
Hmm.
hear about the rest of it. So June is
Yes.
the
June.
okay.
Yep. June.
Okay. Awesome. All right. So I do love asking people about how they love to learn and books and classes. Have you read any books that have significantly impacted you, or have you taken any classes that have really made a difference for you in your business?
I think the book that comes to mind is Profit First.
Mm-hmm.
Is It was really one of the best books I ever read. So I read that probably during the pandemic.
Okay.
And then because my business was pretty small at that time, at the beginning. And once I read that, I was able to set up all my accounts.
Okay.
So I have a tax account, a profit
Mhm.
account, an operating expense account. And so I have everything set up to be in percentages of what I know
Mhm.
my business is for profitability. And I'm able to pay myself every 2 weeks, like a regular
Okay.
paycheck. And then when the taxes come up, like they were due the 15th of April, and then they're due again in June.
Hmm.
So all the money's there already,
Yeah.
because I do profit first. So that has really changed the course of my business, to make sure I am profitable, and to make sure I
Okay.
have the money available, and I don't have to borrow any from the house or borrow some from a bank to be able to pay taxes when they're due, because taxes are so high.
So, so
I
I
wonder why people are even in businesses. So, because I'm just too honest to let anything get past me. It's all accounted for down to the
right.
penny of everything. But tax, every time I have to send in those giant checks, it's very, very disappointing and disheartening.
But that was actually the best moment for me when I started Profit First was
Hmm.
I put my tax money into an account that I couldn't write a check for, or I
Yep.
couldn't uh, access through an ATM. And when I went to withdraw that money to pay our
Hmm.
taxes, I was like giddy. And the person,
Yes.
person, I don't know what she thought I was buying, but when I said it's for my taxes, I think she thought I was insane. But it was in setting up a business in the beginning, I didn't do everything thoughtfully and well. And
Hmm.
so, like you said, we'd be writing this giant check, and I'd be like,
Mm-hmm.
wait, I'm not ready to put that much money out. And
Right.
so Profit First allowed me to get that set aside, and it was just even to this day when it's time to pay our taxes,
Mm-hmm.
we pay it quarterly, and I will
Yes.
I will put the money aside. And every time my husband says, "Really, we have the money?" I'm like, "Yes,
Mm-hmm.
and we've had
Yep.
it for years now."
Yes, it is a relief when that day comes, to be able to
Agreed.
have it all available. But I also I received my MBA in 2010. So that's been something else that's really helped me to determine my path for my business.
Right. Congratulations. That's
Thank you.
awesome.
Thank you. That was right after I quit working. I finished, and so my kids were still little.
Okay.
But it's helped me a little bit to know how to do this. But Loyola calls me and they say, "Well, what are you doing?" And I say, I have my own little tiny business in my basement." And they just don't even know what to say because they expect their people to go do humongous things. But
But
I'm
I think what
pretty
you do is
happy.
humongous. I was going to say
Yes, yes,
you're making sure that your family doesn't go into debt so that you can
yes.
send your kids to college. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's fantastic.
Yes.
Amy, I'm very curious since you mentioned not using QuickBooks and liking to use paper. Do you
Mm-hmm.
use much technology in your business?
I use my phone, I guess, to take pictures of my work. I do need to get better pictures. But then again, I love taking pictures of my work, but I don't know if doing the other technology helps me at all, like Instagram and whatnot.
Okay.
But I do love my computer to be able to do all my Excel spreadsheets.
Mhm.
So that's probably about it. Laser
Okay.
laser measure I use.
Yeah.
Um,
Huge.
yes, so that's about it for technology.
Okay.
I may buy an iPad this year, but maybe it's too late because of the tariffs. I don't know.
I know my husband and I were just talking about that. I may need a new computer. I'm thinking we should probably do that right now, like
Hmm.
really right now. So, in the workroom, what three business items could you not live without?
I love my walking foot machine.
Hmm.
That's probably the most important. It was a great investment. It was after my first CWC in 2022 when I
Hmm.
took Janelle Deck's class. She was teaching a cushion class, and I had just been
Yes.
using my baby lock that's like a semi-industrial.
Okay.
And I had a 29 cushion job coming up and
Oh.
talked to her, and she said, "It's worth it. You just buy that machine and you get the machine and you'll just be so thankful." Well, that machine paid for itself just with that job and time
I was going to
savings.
say, and you said how much you love making cushions.
Yes.
So, and you probably love making them because you have a
Yes.
walking foot.
Yes. And so, I drove down to, there's a supplier in Baltimore City. So I went during the day and found the shop and bought it on the spot because they had just gotten one in and they delivered it like the next week. And that's probably the best thing in my workroom, besides the table, of course.
Okay.
But those two things, and I love acrylic rulers. I have a whole wall of them.
I have a whole bunch of them too.
So I love gadgets. I love any little things that can help me do something even just a little bit faster. I buy,
Mhm.
even if
Okay.
it's just for one job.
Okay.
If it can save me an hour and it's $100, I buy it.
Yeah.
So I have so many things that I've purchased just for one job, but it saved me money and time. So
Okay.
yep.
Amy, do you do any sewing for pleasure?
I actually did this past weekend. I have a bridal shower coming up this coming week, and I made her an apron and
Oh,
some pot
nice.
holders.
That's
So,
awesome.
so it's kind of funny because most people my age don't really appreciate homemade gifts, but she is definitely one to appreciate them. So
Okay.
I spent the extra time and money because and buying fabric, cotton fabric is a lot harder now.
Right.
So I was able to find the perfect fabric and made my own pattern. So I used my drafting skills from college and made my own pattern, and it's really cute. So,
Oh, that's
yep.
nice.
But I also love quilting. So I did bring a sample to show you. This is what I'm working on.
Oh, Amy, that's beautiful. Can you send me a photograph of that? Because
Yes.
most people
Hmm.
will just be listening to the
Yep,
podcast. I don't
exactly.
it's not video, but that's
Yeah,
beautiful.
so this is all hand done. It's English
Okay.
paper piecing, and
Okay.
it'll be a quilt when it's finished. But
Okay.
each of these 1 inch things has about 16 stitches in it.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's very fine handiwork.
Okay.
And it's all hand done. So
All of that. Oh,
all
wow.
yes,
So
and
when
there's
people see the photograph of this, they're
yes.
going to be amazed.
So
That's
it's
beautiful.
a work in progress.
Okay.
But I do this usually during the winter time when it's a little bit colder. But
Okay.
so I do love doing that for stress relief and calming my brain at night.
Okay.
So mhm.
And I'm really pleased to see that because so many of us lose that um, the joy of sewing when we
Mhm.
start a sewing business.
Yes.
And since that is all hand done, that is also
Mhm.
very different from working at your machines.
Yes.
But and because I didn't do any personal sewing for so long, I was always asking to see how other people were fitting it in. But I
Yeah.
think the hand sewing, I think, does make a difference.
Yes. Well, I can pick it up at any, especially during when the kids were playing a lot of sports. I would have it at every sideline
Right.
and just work on little pieces. And because I could watch and it would calm my nerves, especially in soccer, because soccer would always
Oh,
get so
yeah,
great.
yeah.
So it helped a lot during those seasons.
My younger daughter was the field hockey goalie. That was
Oh,
extremely
yeah.
stressful.
I wouldn't have been able to watch.
There were times I did not. Playoff games, some of the moms stood in front of me so that I didn't watch.
I couldn't have handled that, that's for sure.
Amy, what is your favorite thing to make?
Well, it's probably cushions, but
Okay.
this summer I haven't had any time to make any. I get clients that will ask me, even in February, can you make cushions and have them by May? And
Mhm.
the answer was no this year. I couldn't do any because I'm doing a lot of draperies and Roman
Right.
shades. So I really love to make motorized Roman shades. So
Okay.
that's probably my other favorite thing to do because sometimes this because I use the spring loaded ones from
Mhm.
I do not use any bead chains, and so sometimes programming the motor is easier than getting the spring just perfect. So
I agree with you. It can
yes.
be challenging sometimes.
So I really encourage my clients to go motorized if they can.
Mhm.
It doesn't really add that much cost because it is a little bit quicker because
Mhm.
you don't use as many. The spring is kind of expensive now, and
Right.
so it's I do love making motorized Roman shades though too.
Okay. I love that. What do you do extremely well?
Hmm. This is always hard because we're always so hard on or I'm always so hard on
You're
myself.
not
So
alone. You're not alone.
I think I work really well one-on-one with clients,
Okay.
especially if they're a recommended, referral from a previous client, then they
Right.
kind of know how I work. And it's amazing the relationship that I can establish with somebody while deciding all the fabrics, while just being personable with them and getting to know them.
Mhm.
And that's probably something that I do really well is the one-on-one, whether
Okay.
it's in their home or meeting at Panera to look at more samples, or
Okay.
I think I'm pretty good at that.
Okay. What do you not do so well?
This is always a funny one because there's so many, right? Um, Sometimes it's managing my time.
Okay.
Procrastination does get in the way, especially if I'm at a hard part in something. It's not going exactly as I imagined in my mind. It's hard to
Yes.
get started again. So
Mhm.
that's when it's good just to put it down and close the door and go upstairs because trying to do something when you're not in the right mindset and have procrastinated and then something has gone wrong, it's easiest just to leave it alone for a while. So
Time to walk away.
management of
Okay.
time is sometimes difficult, but if nobody's home and it's just me and the dog, then I get a lot done. Like today will
Okay.
be a very productive day for me. So
Okay.
mhm.
What do you love best about this business?
For me, it's definitely the two side using both sides of my brain,
Hmm.
because I don't mind sitting at my desk for an hour straight and working on paperwork, closing out jobs and costing them, or doing quotes. because then since I have so much data from previous jobs, it's gotten a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
And then the creative side, because I get to figure out how to make something that's fabric into something that's beautiful.
Okay.
And so both sides of my brain are active every day, which I really, really love about this business.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that. What do you like least about this business?
I think it's wondering when the next client's going to call me,
Okay, fair
because
enough.
I am retail.
Yeah.
Again, it's always a big worry, but I have to have faith that my business is going to be blessed as it has been.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's not, then I need to think about it in a different way. So
Okay.
yes.
What about you would surprise people?
This one was hard. So of course I asked my husband, and he hit it right on the head, and that was calling people. I don't like to call people. I don't like to be on the phone. So I would rather drive to your house and talk to you than pick up the phone and call.
Okay.
Which is sometimes difficult. If I need to, even if I need to order a pizza, I would rather have him do it, because I just don't like doing it. I
Okay.
just don't. I don't like to hear my voice on the phone.
Yep.
So that's probably surprising, because I do, but I do like to be one-on-one or small groups,
Right.
and I do make the phone calls when I have to.
Right.
Like right now, I'm fighting with the vendor because they charged me for a fabric that was discontinued, and they still sent me an invoice that was paid by my credit card. So I am
Oh
talking to
no.
them.
So no fabric, but a
No
charge.
fabric, but a
Okay.
charge. So yes, and that's why it's important to know your numbers too, to
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
what every fabric from every vendor is going to.
Right.
Because I could have easily missed it, because I use this vendor quite a bit, and I could have been missing the money. So,
Yeah.
but yes. So
But
when it's
it's
necessary, I call.
okay. So I recently had a conversation with my daughters and our one son-in-law and future son-in-law about none of them like making phone calls.
Mm.
And I had to laugh because our younger daughter and her fiance, they actually do talk on the phone. They don't text each other. They talk to each other. But when it comes to other phone calls, and my younger daughter was setting up something, and I knew where she was going with this. She was, so I have to call them and ask them some questions, right? And I said, yes. And I'm the mom who always said, I was the suck it up mom. Can you call
Me
and
too.
change that appointment for me? No,
No.
your appointment, you do it. So
Yes.
I made them do it, but they still
Hmm.
don't like making phone calls.
Yes.
And I knew where she was going. Well, could you and I meet? And I said, no, honey, you're 31 years old. You can handle this phone
Yes.
call.
And
And
I
in
know I
fact,
can
she did
handle
it.
it. That's
But
good.
I get it. I get it. Amy, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Well, that's something I always consider, a couple times a week, because do I want to grow? Do I want to hire people? Do I want
Right.
to move out of my basement? And it varies, because I do feel like I am pretty productive. I could increase my capacity by just working more,
Hmm.
but I don't know how much bigger I want to grow. So I may still be right here, but taking over the rest of the basement in
Right.
5 years. And I do have a high school helper that comes every once in a while to help me roll out when I'm doing a lot of draperies,
Hmm.
which is so helpful. Even though my arms can almost, I have very long arms, I still have to walk around the table to mark
Right.
and to
And
cut.
having
So
another human being there to do
yes,
that, that's awesome.
because that is more than twice as fast when you
Right.
have a second person for rolling out draperies and marking them.
Right.
So I don't know. I think maybe I will still be doing what I'm doing, and probably maybe grow a little bit. Maybe
Okay.
work with the designers too.
Mhm.
Because I do see the benefits of just having them come and say, "Here, make
Yeah.
this." And then all the thoughts would have to come from that, with the how to engineer it from there, because I'm
Right.
usually working up a project before it comes in, the fabric
Right.
even comes in. So I think that's where I'll be in 5 years, maybe.
Okay. I love that that's an option for our businesses. I love that we
Yes.
can grow if that's what we want, but I also love that we can keep it at a manageable level that
Hmm.
makes us happy and still brings in the income that we want. I think that's
Yes.
fantastic.
I mean, my expenses are pretty low,
Mhm.
and I don't have to pay anybody, so it's beneficial right now for me to stay small. So
Okay. In what ways do you think you're resilient?
Hmm. Well, I think just coming down here every day and planning what I'm going to do and trying to do the best job that I can. And when it gets tough, I continue.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably the best way to describe that because it's not easy every day to do that, especially if the
Agreed.
weather's crappy outside and I just want to stay in bed or stay doing nothing or bake something instead of working. It's choosing to do this every day is definitely how I'm resilient.
Okay. I,
Yes.
I love hearing the answer to that question because I think so many of us don't even realize that just by that very definition you just gave, that is what makes us resilient, is that we
Hmm.
just keep going.
Yes, for
But
sure.
not everybody does. And
Right.
that's I don't believe we could be running these businesses if we weren't. And so
Hmm.
that's why I ask it the way I do.
Hmm.
So where can people find you, Amy? What you mentioned, not really loving the social media part of it, but are you on social media?
I do have a Facebook account, Windows by Amy. And
Okay.
I am on Instagram,
Okay.
also
Oh.
Windows by Amy, but that is very, very seldom. It might have been years since my last post. So that's something I'm not very good at is
Okay.
Instagram. Trying to get my 16-year-old daughter to help me, but she seems sometimes busier than I am. So I need to get better at that. Maybe that's my goal for this year is to get better at that. So
Okay. Well,
yes.
I will put the links
Okay.
in the show notes for people to find you. So, for the final question, can you give any advice to someone who's new in this business or to someone who's been in business for a while or both?
I think it's definitely seeing our work as a business is very important um, because we are worth so much to our clients and to the
Hmm.
designers. Knowing that we have a skill that is kind of going out of style that isn't around that much, we need
Hmm.
to make sure we're charging what we are worth and raising our prices every year because a rising tide floats all boats. So
Agreed.
um, we really have to be charging the right amount and being profitable um, and setting it up like a business to make sure we know our numbers, to know where we're making the most money and what type of jobs, and making sure we're charging enough for markup and all that. So that's probably my biggest piece of advice is just to know your numbers and make sure we're charging enough.
Okay, that's terrific. Amy, thank you so much for saying yes and for agreeing to do this today. I really appreciate it. It's been so nice for me to get to know you better. I've been on Zoom with you in some library meetings and things like that, and I see you on Facebook. But this is just and I've seen you in person before, but
Yes, yes.
this is just much nicer. So, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for asking me. It has really been an honor to be here with you today. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. It isn't often that I get to speak with someone who has both sides of their brain so equally engaged in what they're doing every day. There's so many of us who say, "Oh, I'm not very good at the numbers," or "Oh, I love doing the numbers. I'm not that creative when it comes to the window treatments, but I can so well." And just to listen to Amy talking about how she loves using both sides of her brain every day, and also looking at the fact that while she does not at this point want to run a large business, the profitability of her business is key for her. And I admire that about how she's running this business of hers. I really hope that you enjoyed hearing Amy's story. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a great day.